Welcome everybody. Welcome all my buddy artist friends. Welcome to another morning Sunday painting with David, right? Or Sunday demo, watercolor demo with David. And so today we're doing a street scene. I haven't done one of these in a while, and so hey, Sherry from Indiana. So we're gonna be going, and I would love to be doing this outside, right? But actually today is a very rainy and foggy day out there. It would have been kind of neat to do a foggy day. But anyways, we're inside the studio and we're going to be doing this scene. And you can tell I drew it up already. Morning, Maria. Morning, Mary Beth. Morning, morning. Happy Sunday. And boy, wouldn't it be fun to be out there painting plein air doing this in plein air? I wonder what it's like in Paris right now. Actually, last week we did the Notre Dame, and so now we're over to the Eiffel Tower, right? So maybe I'm trying to get over to Paris one of these days to France. All right, so let's get going here, and we're gonna start with the sky, which is the lightest, and hold on, let me just get a sip of coffee. Cheers, everybody! Cheers. I'm drinking out one of these new, this one of these Stanley things, but it's kind of weird because I'm not sure if you should be drinking coffee out of one of these straw things. But we'll do it anyways. So as I was looking at this, I'm going to do the background cool and the foreground warm. So it's going to be like at dusk. And so what I want to do is I want to do this a little bit darker. I remember when I used to work downtown Chicago, and I get home and like I'd take the walk to the train in the evening. Yeah, there's a lot of atmosphere outside here today. It would have been great to do that atmosphere here. And I may even try to do some of that atmosphere here in the picture. But in Chicago, when I used to walk to the train, I remember like the lights were very orange. And so with the orangeness of the lights, and the sky would always be a rich, dark blue. Very dark, though. This is a little bit too light. If you look at the picture right here, the photo, like the sky is light blue. I want to make it a little bit darker because it's always had darker to lighter, and I think I want to have that look like when I used to walk in the streets in Chicago. And so I'm going to do it. The Eiffel Tower will still be darker because it's not going to be. I'm not going to light it up like it's probably lit up, right? And so I'm just going to kind of go through here with a lighter blue, going right in these buildings, but not as light as that. I'm going to go a little bit darker than that. I can't believe everybody's up this early. I kind of had to hurry up in here and draw this up this morning. So I'm going to take a little bit of ultramarine blue, actually a lot of ultramarine blue here, and let's see how this looks with ultramarine blue. And I'm going to stop it at the building only because I want this to be warm. The building's going to be warm. Maybe a little bit of gray in there, but I'm going to go right through these buildings. And down here it's going to be lighter. It's going to be a little bit lighter on the bottom part. And blue and orange is my complement, so it's really cool when you do like a blue. I'm just using pure, well, let's use a little bit of Prussian blue with the pure Prussian and ultramarine. Make it a little bit darker and rich blue. I want that rich blue that you see sometimes in the evening. Go right into the buildings because the buildings are going to be darker. Slightly darker, but they will be darker. So as I'm going down here, I'm going to get it lighter and lighter. And maybe make it warmer too. So I'm going to use a little bit of horizon blue. Make it a little bit lighter down here. I'm working on, by the way, I'm working on just a piece of paper, not a board. It is Stonehenge Aqua, 300 pound. It is 300 pounds, so it's not going to fold or bend or... It looks like anytime you erase in this paper, I erased a little bit here. Look at that. You can kind of see it when you erase. I was erasing some of the line work. So you have to watch that. You have to watch out for that. And I might as well bring this blue right down here. There's a sign here that's going to be red, but I'm just going to bring it all the way down. And I do that because that way it all feels like in the same area. I don't want it to sit there and do individual things. I want the whole thing to feel like the same lighting. Lighter on the bottom, so horizon blue up, a little bit more horizon down here. And since everything else is going to be a little bit darker, that's fine. I mean, I'm not making it as light as the picture, but that's my prerogative. I can do that if I wanted to make it. I'm not sure why I made that lighter right there. I want to make it a little bit darker up here. A little bit darker. Being kind of picky on the sky. Just trying to remember what those skies were like in Chicago when I used to walk to the train. And it was a beautiful, beautiful sky. And nice and dark on top. And it really worked well with the yellows and oranges that I'll be using up front here. Now this window right here is a window. I'm going to reflect that blue right into the window right away. Same thing up here. I'm going to reflect that into there because it reflects into any glass that's down here. And so maybe into the windshields of the cars. You do that right away. I had an outdoor art show yesterday. Oh, it was cold, but warmed by acceptance of my artwork. Now resting, enjoying David's talent. Thank you, David. Well, thanks, Dave. Boy, art show this late in the year, but probably pretty good sales for Christmas. That's great. I always liked art shows right before Christmas because those usually sell pretty well. And I know, like I said in my newsletter, a lot of the galleries I noticed are all doing small works so that people can afford them. But you can have some small works, but just have a few extra big ones in there just for those people who can afford it. All right, so there's my lights. That's my lights, and now let's get to our lights in here. And I'm not going to make this sign yellow, and I'm not even going to print out this sign because I'm not sure if that sign is actually there. This is a scene that I took off of Pexels.com, we're royalty free, and so, but I'm not sure if this is AI or something, or if that was like that. And I also took some of the flowering away. It looked kind of weird that there was flowers on top, and maybe it was like that, but I decided I'm going to make this a random letters there. I'm not going to write recruitment. Whatever that means in French. And so, but I'm gonna fake it so that it does not exact location. So let's put a little bit of orange. My orange is really dirty. Look at the. So people always ask me, my palette is really dirty, and why do I keep it that dirty? Well, look I can just go right back, and I can instantly make the color underneath the little bit of dirt that's on top. It's just a slight bit of dirt from darker colors that I mix into there. Yellow, you should probably have 2 yellows, and one for mixing and one for pure. But look at it, I can just really quickly go in here, rub it out, and it'll be nice and, look at it, that's pretty bright, right? So you don't have to worry too much about that. When I want a pure color, I'm definitely going to get it. And so I'm just going to take a light color over all the words here, a little bit of orange and yellow. And this is me glowing. I want it to glow. And so put that over here. I'm just prepping my paper for the lights. That's I always do the lights first. Just prep your paper, put in the lights. Doesn't really show anything yet. You're just putting color in there. And make it a nice wash. Always make it a fun, nice wash. And one of these Saturdays or Sundays, I'm going to do a demonstration of abstract. Yeah, we had just had one done at our club at the Lake Region Watercolor Guild. John Heron, I think his name is, and it was really nice. It was really cool to see. And it's hard for me to teach abstract because it's just hard because I'm not sure what I'm doing. But what I'm going to show is some of the work I had done and how I start like a demonstration for not knowing exactly what I'm going to say for doing an abstract. But one of the things I definitely know is that when you're using a certain medium, you use that medium to its fullest, like when you're doing abstract, because if you're using watercolor, what's cool about watercolor is that it's neat when you float pigment and you see the pigment and you get that granulation happening and all that drippiness and the soft edges. Well, that's a part of watercolor that no other medium can get, like watercolor, and so you use that as part of the abstractness to it. It has to look like a watercolor. And then texture, maybe you add gouache to it and get texture to it too. And so, very interesting. I'm not sure if I can teach it, but I'll practice it and show you guys how I practice it. So then I put this in the floor too, a little bit of lights in the floor. It's one of those things. I've been asked to teach abstract, but it's a tough thing if you're not quite sure what you're doing. And then to teach it, that's even harder. Then you're thinking, how am I going to teach this? And I think you have to know a lot about design, lights and dark patterns and stuff like that, because you don't have objects as so much as you have, patterns of light and dark patterns and color patterns and texture patterns, and a lot of it is like we did, like the John Heron did. You kind of fly by the seat of your pants, and you just kind of put a wash down and look. I mean, I don't think you can plan it as well as you can plan something like this that's actually got, objects in it. All right, so there's my lights, and I wish this was dry because I go right in there. But for my middle tones, and that would be the Eiffel Tower and this. But since I'm gonna have to wait a little bit, let's do the street. I have to wait for that to dry. That's one of those things you have to do. And look at it, I erased it when I was drawing. I erased it once, and you can tell it did something to the paper. Kind of agitates the paper. So watch out when you're drawing about using an eraser on your paper. All right, let's go in here and do our mediums and the street and then the sidewalk. I think we can do that even with it being wet up here. So there's a lot of blue in here, a lot of blue in the cars. And then we do have the white of the car lights, but I'm going to keep that for white paint. I'm not going to put masking fluid there. So I'm just going to start with white and blue. And I'll put, like I said, I'll put the white in there later. And how do I get gray? I kind of use lavender. And I also have a couple grays in my palette. Excuse me for a second. About to sneeze. Nope, I didn't. I have this white on white, or gray on gray, I mean. This is called gray on gray. Mix that with a little bit of lavender and a little bit of blue, ultramarine blue from the sky. And we'll have to put this in here. And it's opaque color, but I'm using it wet into wet. So here's a little bit of black, a little bit of violet. And we're using it with a lot of water, so it'll still look transparent. Transparent, what I'm trying to think of. Trying to talk and paint and think at the same time. See how I'm separating the blue from the orange? And so this will be the light part and the back part, and so that's blue, and then I have the orange, which will really make it look in this area. I will get some of that in over here later. And it is kind of dark here, the sidewalk. And I'm not scared to use black in my gray either. I mean, it's a very simple way of making gray right away. So the dark sign. I don't like doing pieces either. I don't like doing little things right now. I can do that at the end when I'm doing pieces. Right now I look for the big lights and darks. And with watercolor, that's one of the techniques, is to use it using your washes and go through. Unless you're a hyperrealist, then you're doing pieces and stuff, and that's a little bit different. But when you're doing like this with all lights and darks, then I try to do the pattern. And it's so important. That really came up a lot this week in my classes, is how important drawing is. For one thing, drawing is, the number one most important thing about your painting. And the drawing meaning that's also part of the design of your painting, and the perspective of your painting and all that stuff. That all is part of the drawing. So you need to get that in there really well. Just kind of faking the large lights and darks. Starting in January, remember, if you've been with me for a while, you'll know that in the beginning of the year we start with one color, and I decided this year to do a little bit differently. I'm going to do 2 weeks of one color, 2 weeks of two color, 2 weeks of three colors. I always think we just go through that too fast. And I think using one color for a whole 2 weeks is going to be a good thing instead of just doing it for 1 week. Because it really, using one color is actually a very good thing to do and teaches you about looking for the values. And you know how I am about values. You need to get a value pattern in your pictures. That's a number 2. You know, your value pattern in your no tan and all that is your number 2 most important thing. Drawing is number 1. Number 2, I always say, is getting to know your design, making your design good. And we're talking about a little bit more this year when we start out in January. So if you have friends that are beginners and they want to learn from the get-go, January is always a good time. I think at the end of January I'll be in Florida, so that'll be the 2 colors. That'll be 2 weeks in 2 colors, and so we'll see how that works. Now see, I'm using a little bit more warm colors here, the darks, and I'm kind of trying to do the big area of darks. I should wait until this though. But I have to wait for this to dry, and that is not dry yet. So let's do this up here, and this looks pretty good down here, I think, already. I'm making this a little bit warmer, a little bit lighter right at the moment because I just want to see how dark this is going to be. I'm going to establish my grayer darks up here. They're going to be a mixture of yellow, or the oranges and the browns, and I'm just going to go over everything except for the windows up here. Please ask questions. If you need to ask some questions, go right ahead. Yeah, in the last 2 weeks of January, I will be down in Florida teaching first at the villages. And so if you're near the villages and you want to take my workshop, there's 3 different things I do down there. One is watercolor, just the watercolor alone. Second one is watercolor and gouache. And it's 2 days, 2 days. And then if you just want to do a paint party, I'm going to be doing my last paint party I ever do. Not that I don't like them or don't mind. I don't mind them, but it's just there's so much I have to take with if I'm doing paint parties, and so I may have to switch and make my paint parties more of a watercolor paint party because it's acrylic and I have to take so much materials with me. I do drive down. So big area of medium, and see I'm going to get a little bit of blue, a little bit of orange. It makes it kind of brownish. And I can use some grays in there too. I can just put a little bit of lavender or violet into that mix. It makes it kind of grayish. And you notice I'm doing all the middle tones, and the darks will come after on top of that. Oops. I'm just getting an overall medium on this. This side should be a little bit darker. You know, now once it's wet into wet, I put other colors in there, and I just work the wash. Work the wash. Work the wash so that it has some floating pigment and some different color pigments in there. Do the whole area, not just pieces. And see how you can put like orange in there, and you can put different colors while they're floating. Maybe closer down here, I'll put some red. It's like it's shining up into that area. Big areas, work big areas. If you do work smaller areas, let's say you want to work pieces, then I would still try to do the bigger part pieces, you know, try to do the bigger pieces anyways. You just like you would do this, but do this, you know, slowly, get in there and get all the detail and stuff, but still work the big areas of light and dark. I think that's still a thing that you should do, even if you are working pieces for like hyperrealism. And that's too wet. See, when it's too wet, it's going to be different. It's not floating as well, so I want to get more pigment in there. A little bit of darker pigment. One thing I did like about the demonstration that John Herring was giving is about the color in that photographs, and how he just uses them as reference. They're not. I don't have to make it look like exactly like the reference. And I'm a big believer in that, especially because I don't need to have it look exactly like the photo. I want it to be my own creation, you know, right? These are your own creations of painting. And so maybe there's a certain technique that you use that is all your own, and it's not going to show you that in the photograph, and so you do that on your own. All right, so that's a big area done. Just a big area covered. This is dry now. Now I can go in there. And so I'm gonna work in the background now and work myself forward. I have to watch right here because that'll bleed into that. And so, but I can always just leave that a little bit lighter. And I'm just gonna work with the gray bluish colors. I used ultramarine before and lavender. And so I'm just gonna start way back here. And these buildings are very light. And so I'm just gonna kind of gesture at them. I'm not gonna go and put every little window in there. I'm just gonna kind of make sure it looks like buildings. Kind of gray, and I get darker as I come forward here a little bit. I'm gonna go right over this light, this lamp here, because it's gonna be black, that lamp. So just go right through that. Anytime there's something darker on top of it, go through it. Don't go around it. It gives you those white lines, and it makes it look messy. So just go right through all the darks. Hey, Simbima from Brussels. Wow. Is it really late there? And from Wyoming. That's one state I got to get to this year. And I was thinking, I do have to drive. I'm driving to Santa Fe for my class in Santa Fe. And then I'm going to be heading to Reno after that to the expo, for the Plein Air Expo. And then on the way back, I was thinking, boy, maybe I should spend a little bit of time on the way back and head out north and kind of come back the north route. I know I've got to go through Salt Lake City, but I've never been to the Northwest except for Seattle, but I haven't been like any of the Utah, Wyoming. Would love to get up there one day. Alright, and so this is going to be a dark building right here. I have to watch out. I don't want to touch that right yet because it's still wet. Let's see these buildings, and these buildings can get a little bit warmer as you go forward here because they're coming to the front, and so you can get a little bit warmer. I think you heard the train again. Now this side I want a little bit darker because I wanted to pull out a little bit. So this side I can go make it a little bit darker. And again, the outer edge is what's important in this, is making the look of the buildings. I just have to do the outer edge. I need some coffee. I'm not used to drinking out of like a water bottle. I think that's maybe not used for coffee. Maybe it's just a water bottle. Last night I went to McHenry. They had a comedy club, and we have a local news caster, a sportscaster, who Pat Tomasulu, who is at WGN, and he's a sportscaster for WGN News in the morning news, and he does a comedy comedy show, stand up, and I was really wondering if he's going to be good, and he was really good. I mean, he was really funny, a lot different than I thought he would be, and it was really good. Very, very good. You ever get a chance to see Tom or Pat Tomasolo, take a look. He was super funny. Though we had people in front of me, I think 4 people in front of us that were actually had a little bit too much to drink, and they were just, and boy, he really laid them down really quickly because they were speaking up in the middle of his thing, and everybody was like, "Will you just shut up?" But he knew how to do a heckler really well, and the whole crowd was super happy that he could do that. So see how I'm gonna make it a little bit darker, and it's not super detailed. I'm just getting the look of the distant buildings. I wait for the detail later. I get the detail, the super fine details later. Right now, I'm still squinting my eyes, and I don't even look at the big picture. I have on my screen. I have two screens in front of me. There's one with a big picture of it, and I haven't even looked at that because I look at the small one that's on my screen that you guys are seeing, and that's enough because I don't have to. I don't want to see the detail right now. I want to see the big picture. So when you're actually working your work, sometimes look at the big picture, or take your glasses off and look and squint at it so you can just see the big values. Again, it's very important that you see the values more than the objects, the small objects at first. And that's how I'm just doing big picture things. I want to get that big look of the items, and then later on you can go smaller and smaller, more and more detailed. It's all going to still be there, but you just have to wait. You have to wait for that. You're doing your middle tones and you're doing your big middle tones. And I can't stress that enough because it's important. All right, now let's get our awnings done, and they're red. I'm going to take some red here. I'll get the brightest reds first. Always light to dark, and so I'll take a little bit of orange and red here. Scarlet Lake is I know it doesn't look very light red because it's all dirty on top, but again, I'm just going to wipe it off. Wipe off the dirt from the top of it. Pick up a nice red, and there's a nice light right here. And there's going to be a light right there. And then it'll be darker reds underneath this, and there's a stop sign here, or some kind of sign, and I'm gonna go right over it because it's gonna be darker. Anything that's gonna be darker on top of the light, just go over it. Don't go around it. I know this is all covered with flowers on top, but I don't think that looked that great, so I'm not gonna paint it that way. Zion National Park in Utah. Oh, I have to look into that. I've never been there. I also got to see Mount Rushmore one of these days. I know it's like I've seen it like in the online, because sometimes I take trips online. I just go to Google Earth, and I just start going to different places in the planet. It's really kind of cool doing that, and so that's what I do sometimes. I just kind of pick an area on the world, and then just go there and just look around, because most of the places you can find, Google does Google street map and stuff, and so you can actually see a lot of stuff. I used to I had my class, we'd paint from a Google Earth picture, like pick a space on the planet, and then just paint it. And so I was in Mongolia one time. On Google Maps, I was in Mongolia, and it was so neat to do the street scene of Mongolia. All right, so now I'm getting the light, warm reds. I also put some dark ones in here too, so I'll take a little bit of alizarin crimson with my red, and I'll just put a little bit of darks in there too. And I'm doing this now for the soft edge parts, because some of this I want to be soft edged. This goes down here. When you work it long enough, you know how to get soft edges and hard edges and middle type of edges where they're kind of hard but not super hard. So it's just a fact of practicing working wet into wet a lot. I work a lot of wet into wet where I let it be wet and then making enough paint so it stops it. And this is not my darkest darks yet, but they're pretty dark. They're getting pretty dark, and I'm taking some, I take purple into my red. That makes it pretty dark. Maybe a little bit of black to dull it down a little bit. And the side of this umbrella should be a little bit darker. And I'm just going to take it right down into this area here too. I'm going to try to let things go together. I'm not doing pieces. I hate doing pieces. of a painting. I like doing the big areas because watercolor lends itself so well to painting through things and letting a big wash look really beautiful because of how you're laying it down all together. That's the thing about watercolor, is that you want to paint big washes. That's the best look for watercolor, is painting big washes so that they can meld and blend and give you all that granulation and all that beautiful wet into wet look, the floatiness of the painting. And taking other colors and letting them fit inside there too. Like in here, there's not just warm, but you can put some cool in there. And you can do that while it's wet. You can't do it when it's dry because that's a whole different medium then. That's like gouache. And so here you want things to float together. And I'm just going to make this dark in here too. I look at my values again. I'm not looking for details. Now I have to go around details sometimes because it's important that you don't go through certain things. But I can rub them out also later on. I can rub them out, and I'm going to also put a little bit of blue inside there just because it reflects the sky. Look at all the different colors I use when I'm floating my pigment. And then I've got to watch that I keep some of my lights. And if I miss that and I go back and I rub it out, that's okay too. Paint through your big areas. Paint through your detail, because you can always get that back later by rubbing out, or if you put masking fluid beforehand, that's a cool thing to do too. Any questions? If you can stop, Zion. Hey, Sue from Minnesota. All right, so let's go around these people. The people will be lighter, but not super light. So that wash I did first, I can go right through them. Let me go through some parts of them, and then I'll go darker behind them later too. So this is like a middle tone that I'm going through here now, and then I'll go back later and get some darker colors in there to show the dark details. This again is big areas, it's not details yet, even though I am doing some little bit details, but it's still a big wash. It's still, I'm getting my middle tones in there and not looking for super fine details yet. Well, we're always painting details in some ways, because we have to paint around objects, right? Because we're doing a certain thing, like the umbrella or something. So we do have to go to that point and then make sure it's nice and clean there. But it's different than working pieces, like individual pieces. Make the chalkboard a little bit dark here. And so yes, you are painting pieces in a way, but you're doing it all floating together type of thing. And I'm waiting for my darks, for my dark details at the very end. This is not my dark details yet. This is my middle tone details, big large areas of dark. And it is a little bit more complicated when you do a street scene like this than it is doing other things, but I try to simplify the shapes, the big areas. And watch your center of interest and stuff like that. And this for your lightest light. This is center of interest right here, right? This whole thing is your center of interest. So it's got to be a little bit more detailed, a little bit more color in there. This is a bunch of plants, and then it's got a light behind it here a little bit. A little blue there. I just love, you know, it's like so relaxing to paint. And when you're outside painting plein air or urban sketching, there's something kind of like, it's almost therapeutic. I mean, to me it is. Like this morning, it's just going and just Painting to me is like morning yoga or something. I just veg out, and I do Sunday mornings only because I'm practicing things, and I'm actually trying to get my TWSA paintings done, and I'm going to probably do a street scene, and so this is like a little practice. I've been doing so many other things that sometimes you forget about some of the things that you normally like to do. I love doing street scenes. Matter of fact, the city scenes too. Okay. Look at how nice and big these sections are. Nice and big areas of light and dark. And I'm gonna now go maybe into my Eiffel Tower because that should be done now. It's dry enough, and so for that I'm gonna take my small rigger brush, or no, my small round brush, and I'm gonna use a really light blue color, a little bit darker than what's there, and I use ultramarine, right? And so I'm gonna take all this dirtiness in my palette and just start going right down the Eiffel Tower, and then just, it's not, I don't want it to be that contrasty. I want it to be sit back, and I actually can't see my lines at all, so I'm drawing it on with my paint. I can't see the lines at all. So this is where drawing helps you, if you know how to draw from your imagination, and also you have the picture there. I'm drawing with my brush basically. It's still a little damp here, but that's okay. It's just, I'm going to do it so it's just like your peeks through there. I don't want it to be contrasty. I don't want it to stick out like a sore thumb. I'm going to take a light blue now. Take like my 1/4 inch brush. So my 1/4 inch brush, I'm just going to fill that in with a just slightly darker blue, and then I'll let that dry, and then I'll get a detail of the Eiffel Tower. See, I'm just going to put a little tint. When I say tint, I mean a lot of water, not that much pigment. And then I'm just going to put this down, and I mean the shape of it is going to show you that it's the Eiffel Tower, and the detail I'll put in after it's dry, and I'll put really small lines to kind of give you the shape of the structure, because there's a lot of little structured parts in here, but not right now. First I'm going to get the big parts again, always big to small, so you can make it look like the big parts. And I'm not going to put every little structure in there right now. I'm just overall give it a tint of that color. And here it got dry, so I want to make sure that it's all nice and evenly wet. But I must have scrubbed really hard with that eraser, because when you do that, it really affects the washes when you scrub too hard. And on the bottom here, we're gonna go right to the top of these buildings, and it kind of mixes in with the buildings. So what we want to do here is also get some of this color in the buildings, so it doesn't stand out too much. Like a couple of the windows back here. So Maria, you're doing adhering your watercolor paper to the hardboards. That's great. You can use, like I said, you can use either the gel. The gel is the best to use. Acrylic gel, gel medium is the best to use, because it protects the paper from anything coming from the board. But hardboard, nothing's not going to come through there that much, and so it'll be great. I want to do that one day and just take all my paper and just get it all on the board. So it's so much neater working on boards, because you can see it's like kind of warping a little bit, my sheet of paper here. So I should be doing that too. I'm gonna take a little bit of this blue I have here right now. I'm putting this little chef right here, or I mean the waiter. He's got a white shirt on, but it wouldn't be white here. It would be just a little bit lighter blue here. And getting some of this color in there and some of this color over there is also good. So what I'm going to do is right now put a little bit of sign right here that's red. A little sign out there so that I get my colors over in this side too. And I can put the really detailed stuff in there later on too. Maybe there's an awning over here too that's red. Not super red, but just enough to get a little bit of that color over here too. And this could be a little bit darker. Maybe it could be a dark car. There's some darks in this cars here. What I always do is make the sides darker. The windshields are always light because they're reflecting this color of the sky. I like to make the streets wet too by just falling down. Let it have reflections going straight down. Alright, I think we're ready for super details now, or dark details, because I got all my large areas kind of done. This got a little bit light, and so I want to put one more wash over that. Got a little bit too light. And that's one of the biggest problems I have with my students and myself, is that we never get things dark enough in the get-go. And that's one of the biggest problems, I think, and I don't know how to solve it, because I always tell myself to do it, but I never do it dark enough. You should make your first washes 20% darker than you really want them. They gotta look wrong to be right, because they have to be darker, you know, and I have a hard time doing that for some reason. So you put another wash over, this is fine, but now it's not gonna be as fresh as my first wash. If I would have done it right away, it would have been looking a lot fresher. And some people find it's fine, you know, they don't need to, but I want it to be a certain value, and I don't get it exactly right. All right, now let's do our details. And I can't start here because, so I'm going to start way back there, but I'm just going to start with this lamp right here, and I'm going to start with a really dark color. Prussian blue, black, a little bit of warm color here. I'm using my 1/4-inch brush, and I'm going to go in here now, get hard edges. It's wet, the paper is dry, so I'm going to get a really hard edge. And this is detail now. This is detail time. Everything is already established for you now. Like, all my values are very close. So now I go in there and get my details. And this is when the painting starts looking good, because now I'm getting things to look like what they are. Like cars that start looking like cars. Street lamps are going to look like street lamps. Little sign here. Then we have the don't walk sign. Nice contrasts are happening then. You know, you get all the contrast. And there's some lights down underneath here. I'm just going to put white paint. That's going to be very white paint. I'm not even going to worry about that. I could do that with masking fluid, but not today. I was kind of late down here to draw, so I had no time to put in masking fluid. I like to put a little reflection in the street to make it look like the street is wet. And that's a little bit too much, but I can start with that. And like I said, everything gets too light anyway, so let's just have a little bit of reflection in the street. I like to kind of put that in there. Just, it helps me. I like to make the street look wet and damp. And the street is not like that, but sometimes the street actually acts that way anyways, because of the being cement, and cement is what, glass? It's like sand. And so sand, when it's walked on so much, it actually starts looking very shiny, and it reflects like if there was water on it. And so the details, I'm just going to get in here now with dark details. A small brush. And even though this is dark, it's going to reflect a little bit of red into the dark. So do that while it's wet so that it floats. Put that right in here. Reflect that into the dark part of the... It can be dark and also colorful. And when it's wet, that's when you add the pigment into that wash. Do I have to give the gel medium a certain amount to dry before I start painting? Not really. No, I think, well, actually, let me think about that, because you definitely want it to dry first, I think. Otherwise, it could, maybe the water can go through the paper and never let it dry. So I would definitely let it dry first. Let it dry. Yeah, yeah, you definitely want to let it dry. Now we got some plants up here and this little dark plant right here, so I'm just going to go in there with the dark green. Yeah, that's like how I have to make a bunch of boards together so that I can, I want to do at least 10 or so, so I'll have something to wait around, so I don't have to wait around for things to dry. Spend a day just gluing paper to boards. So now you can see all I'm doing is a bunch of details. I'm just looking at the picture, and I shouldn't jump around like I am, but I am. I'm hurrying up as much as I can. Usually I like to work one area, but since some areas are wet, I can't actually go into them, so. Contrast. It shows things. It shows what's going on. And it is my favorite time of the painting because then things start looking like what they are supposed to look like. And that's when you want to slow down too. When you start doing a detail like this, don't rush through this part, because this is the part that's the most important, because it's got to look like whatever you're painting or drawing. This has got to look like a car, and that's got to look like this, and that's got to look like that. And so that's when you do it at the end, not in the beginning, not when you're doing the big washes. And it's funny that watercolors have to kind of know what their painting is going to look like way before you get going, before you start painting. You almost kind of know what your painting is going to look like, and that's where you may either do a rough sketch, a value study, or a fast, small painting of the same thing that you're going to be painting bigger. A lot of times when I'm doing this is practice, so this is my sketching for something that would be bigger later. Smaller, and basically a sketch for what is to come, maybe bigger, more detailed, but I would still work it the same way. I wouldn't be changing that part of it. I notice that this should be a little bit darker back here, a little more detail, a bit different from the Eiffel Tower, because the Eiffel Tower is behind it, which is actually supposed to be darker, but I'll get to that. Yeah, this is pretty early, isn't it, Maria? I know. It's like you haven't done a still life in a long time either. That's a good thing to do. Still lifes are good things to do because it's you can still show dimension in a smaller distance area, but it's still great for learning how to do big compositions with lights and darks. That never changes. That part stays the same. It's just then it's instead of 1 mile back you're painting 1 foot. And this, I took this the flowers out of this area. It was nothing but flowers all over. Instead, I put a rooftop right here. I just thought there's too many flowers all around there, and like I said, even if it was like that originally, you can do whatever you want. And I just didn't like that look of all those flowers everywhere. I will still put flowers in this area, like right now. I can put some lighter colors in there and put some flowers here and there. Also, there's some flowers right here. Alright, what's this sign? Let's put the sign in there. One thing about this picture, I may go a little bit longer, maybe a little bit longer, but there's a lot of details in this, and so it takes you longer because now I'm at detail stage, and there's just a lot more to do, a lot more things to paint. You can make it a little bit more abstract kind of, so that you don't have to put all that stuff in there, which I'm not doing anyways, like impressionistic painting, but you still need to put enough in to show what's going on. I'm trying to hurry a little bit here so I don't have to go over. Let's put another wash in there for the Eiffel Tower because it got kind of light. See, again, it gets too light. It's my biggest problem. Is trying to make things look dark enough from the get-go. But see how raw that looks? It's way too dark, but once it dries, it'll be much lighter than that. And so that's the hard part, is when you put it down and you're looking like, oh my god, that's so dark, but not realizing that it's going to dry lighter. It'll dry much, much lighter. That's where oil painters and acrylic painters have it good, because they don't have to ever worry about that. That's what they put down is what they put down. Okay, let's get back to our details here. Oh boy, there's a lot in here. Let's get in there. Ironwork here. A lot of this I'll be faking. I'm not going to do exactly what I saw there. You know, you could again, but I got to go faster, so I'm just going to fake some of this ironwork here. Oh, it goes all the way to here. I already made a mistake, see? I'm just doing that, my nervous twitch, where I just kind of take your hand and just kind of just make it move, like a nervous reaction. It goes back. And when you get your darks, again, like underneath here, get dark enough right away so I don't have to go back into this. I'm going to try to do it this time. This is the side. And wet it first. Get your hard edges. Wet it to the edge. And then once it's wet, then apply other colors in there. It doesn't matter what color you actually use when you're first wetting it. I'm just going to use a really dark, but then I go back in. And now it's wet, and now it's very purple, right? But what I'm going to do is then I float other colors in there. I put other colors in there to kind of make it look more realistic, with more colors reflecting in. And go slow. Don't go as fast as I'm going. You don't need to go fast. I do, because I have to do this in an hour, but you do not have to do that in an hour. So take your time. Don't rush it. It's not how fast you are. That doesn't have anything to do with painting. Unless you work for a company that wants you to have a certain time. That's how I got this way, is because I would do storyboards and I had to get them done by the time that the client had the meeting. So I got pretty good at regulating my time and how fast I can do something. And I did that for 35 years. So you can tell that it helped out a little bit when it came to designing and doing your whole painting in 1 hour. It helps a lot. And all this little details, let's see. There's flowers up here too. See, super hard edges now, nice and dark, shadowing details of the light, how the shadows work. This part is darker because it's away from the light. I could go around the lettering, but I decided I'm just going to do that later on with opaques. This one I can maybe paint around some of the lettering here. It is getting inspired. I must say, is like Maria was saying, is very inspired this morning. You know, that's really super important, I think, as an artist. And I was listening to some TikTok this morning, and there's one lady who is an artist, and she's also talks about a bunch of other things. But she was talking about how didn't sell as much this year, but she's still her life is drawing and painting, and it really kind of inspired me, her talk. And so it's like I couldn't wait to get out here and start painting. You know, so inspiration is just such a neat thing, and get it from anywhere. You know, watching movies or people talking, you seeing artwork, watching my videos, whatever inspires you. You know, that's the best thing, because then you feel like you really want to get in there and start painting. Nothing more fun than just sitting there and getting inspired and then just going out and painting. And yeah, sometimes you do failures, but the fact that you're just painting and just enjoying yourself, that's more important. Don't worry about if you get it exactly right. I do tons of paintings. I was saying, I was telling you on last Thursday, I was telling you about how I saw so many paintings in Frankie Johnson's, who is the owner of the gallery, Main Street Gallery, and I was in her studio, and she had thousands of paintings, and I'm not kidding. There was at least thousands, and you know, doing that many paintings, you're gonna get good. What size do you do a small sketch before doing a large one? Do you paint the smaller one? Usually I paint quarter sheet before I do a large one. So quarter sheet, and this size, actually what I'm doing right now, is kind of like a sketch, little sketch to see if it'll work. And sometimes if I'm doing a value study, like just a pencil of a value study, then I use my sketchbook, and that's what it, you know, it's smaller, like half of this. So what would that be? A quarter sheet, and then half of a quarter sheet. So I'll do it that small. You know, if it's just like a pencil sketch study. Some people do it with markers. Some people do it with a little small watercolor set. Some people do it with color pencils. Whatever you do, and you know, just whatever fits you best, and how you can do it so that you know the lights and darks, and get your color scheme in there. You know, get a certain color scheme that you want to follow. Okay, getting pretty close here. Notice I'm using some solid black. You know, I'm using some really, really intense black. And I got that from Alvaro Castanet. He uses like super, super dark colors, and I think definitely they use their sometimes black. Definitely uses some. There's all different kinds of blacks, but the black color is sometimes, you know, some warm, cool. But don't be afraid of it, because you know, and you don't have to always mix it. You can just use the actual color. Now we're going really fast because I only got 1 minute left. I'm going to go over a little bit, guys. This is a little bit more complicated, this scene, so I'm going to go over a little bit. Maybe like 15 minutes, maybe. And you're more than welcome to leave, and it's still going to be up here like it always is, forever and ever. There's just a lot to do in this painting. I thought I could finish it in 1 hour. And we're getting close. Let's get the street and do some cobblestones. Juxtaposition the tiles. place them together a little bit, and then there's this sign right here, or the edge of the curb. Maybe there's a little grate right there. And go around some of this. I definitely have to put the white in, so you have to wait for the white. That's going to have to be the last thing I do. Opaque, I mean, the opaqueness to some of this. I'm just going to get that in there. And let's put our little lines in now for the Eiffel Tower. Is that dry? Yep. See, detail takes longer. I mean, it just does, because there's a lot of things to make things look like what they are. And so the Eiffel Tower has all these little lines going in here. See, I'm taking little lines, and they're just, you know, I mean, they're just random lines that are going down here, and they're tinted. They're not so thick, and they're not super contrasty, so they're just enough to show that what the object looks like. And there are a bunch of X's in here. But very not contrasty. Just don't make them contrasty, because you don't need them to be contrasty. They need to set back. But then it's nice to have them in detail. And now I'm going to get the edge of this building a little bit more cleaned up. A little bit more detail here too, make it a little bit darker. Now with our detailed light white, and I actually have this gouache right here, but it dries up so much different than the watercolor. And I'm going to go back to my watercolor. This is all crackled up a little bit here, and so the tops of things, of course, will be lit up. Like there's some lights right here, and so I'm just going to put round little dots here, and I add a little bit of, I'll touch them a little bit to let them be a little bit, like they shine a little bit. They're wet. I should do them wet. And this is not pure white because I have a little orange in my brush, so. But there's a bunch of these little dots, lights. This is where an airbrush can come in too, where you put a little dab on to make them look like soft edged. And again, I actually like this part, putting opaques in. I've been doing that a lot when I do my plein air work, because it looks a little bit more not watercolor like, but more acrylic like or oil painting like. So you just, and then you do little hits of on the side of things, on the top of a person's head and his shoulders, because they're usually comes from the top, so you see the top of the shoulder and one side of the person too. You can put a little bit on one side of the person's leg. Street lines in a sidewalk are really really help out the sidewalk in perspective. Like here, putting these little lines in, like the cracks in the street. It's a neat thing to put in because it really helps out in making the perspective look good. Okay, I'm rushing here a little bit. Thanks for understanding about the no rush. Thank you. I do want to make it look nice, and so I was just slowing down a little bit. Like I said, doesn't matter the time that you do this. It's more about just getting it the right look, the right drawing. Put a little bit, let's see. Let's make some darks behind these people. Like that's inside, like you can see inside in the window. There's people inside too. And there's also a sign on the window itself. And so I'm just gonna like print that on the window. This little white there, I'm not sure what that's all about. That shouldn't be white. It's a tabletop actually. So let's do that. And underneath the table would be really dark. Except there's a chair right in front here. I'll negative paint the legs in a little bit. And it's not very detailed. I'm kind of just faking impressionistically the legs and stuff. And just so it kind of looks like that. And again, it's a lot of just doing the nervous twitch, the BeckerArt nervous twitch brushstroke. Lines up and down, back and forth. Now this sign is way too light. It has to be darker, and so I'm going to do this corner and almost match that part over there. And then I'll use the light part to look like lettering. So I'll negative paint in the words on the board with the light color I had before. So sometimes it is good to be able to keep that nice and light, or have it lighter first. And then reflect it into the street. I always like reflecting into the street. I noticed too with my demonstrations that they are getting more and more detailed type of things, and I'm not doing as because I look back at about a year's worth, like since COVID started, started doing these, and I'm looking back at some of the old ones, and wow, I used to be really, really, really loose. So I'm getting a little bit tighter in my older age, I guess, but it's a good thing. I like that I'm getting a little bit more detailed. Person right here. I think I'm almost done. Almost done. Any more lights? So you guys see anything on this that I still have to do? Here's a little white. Using a little white on top of things. Maybe this rooftop should be a little bit darker. So let's make this rooftop a little bit darker. Same thing with this up here, maybe a little bit darker. I don't know if you noticed that when I was doing when you saw the drawing, I use shading now a lot, and that's a kind of a neat thing to do, is do the shading with the pencil so that you can see where the darks and lights are. I'm going to take a little bit of opaqueness right here because I think I want to show this side of something. That, and I don't know what this is there. I'm doing it because I wanted to show this sign a little bit better and have it come forward. And now this sign itself with the lettering here, I made it a little bit darker. It stands out a little bit too much. And then the top of this umbrella should be a little bit lighter, and I have to use opaques because, or I can rub it out. Oh, and then the very last thing is going to be the lights in the car. And so that I need some fresh white. I have this. So I'm using gouache, but it dries really hard. Because my watercolor I leave out. I just leave it out like this, but I shouldn't do this for this white. But this is pure white now, fresh white out of the tube. I'm just going to go in there and do it on the light right here in the street. And then we can also, because there's other reflecting lights back here, and so this is, this is a no-no for TWSA, so Transparent Watercolor Society. This is not transparent one bit, so you cannot use this if you're going to do Transparent Watercolor Society. This is white. All right, I think that is it. We're going to keep it at that. If you want to do like a wet wash around these lights, you can just take water and blend this a little bit. I just take water over these little things and then it'll just blend it. You may have to afterwards though put another thing of white in there. Yep. So I'm just take a little bit of thick pound of white and put it right on top of the wetness. And it will bleed a little bit, but you want it to bleed because it'll look more reflective and soft edged. Okay, now I'm going to look crazy here. I got to stop. I think that's it, guys. How far over do we go? 10 minutes. 11 minutes. 11 minutes. 11, my favorite number. So, perfect. Well, thanks, guys. I hope this helped you a little bit about how to do a really complicated scene, street scene, and not have to worry so much about, little pieces. Worry more about the big parts first, and then get smaller and smaller. And as I'm looking at this now, I'm going to do one more thing, and the street is way too light right here. I'm just going to darken that a little bit. Sorry. Thought I was done. But sometimes as I'm talking, I'm looking at the picture, and then I see, make this a little bit darker. Put some of that in here. Do some more of the pavers in the street here. I put pavers in the street. Now we're done. Now that feels better, and also shows the lines of the street. The crosswalk lines. Kind of shows them better then too. All right. Thank you, guys. Thanks so much for standing by here. And 11 minutes over, 12 minutes over now. And we'll see you on Thursday. Thursday, I don't think is a holiday yet, is it? Hopefully it's not. I haven't looked at my calendar. Let's see. Hold on. Let me look at my calendar real quick. Nope. Thursday's fine, the 19th. There's no holiday on the 19th, so we'll definitely be doing that. We probably will not be doing a Thursday on the 26th. Oh, shit. It's a Thursday. And yeah, we will do it on 126 because that's after our Christmas. So we'll be fine. All right. So we'll see you every week for through the holidays. And thanks a lot for stopping by. And we will talk to you on Thursday. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.